Hi, my name is Shona, and I'm a breast cancer survivor. Through a routine mammogram in January of 2022, I found a mass. And then on February 7th of 2022, I was diagnosed with stage 1 infiltrating ductile carcinoma. So my journey began that winter with thinking I was doing a routine mammogram, and then going through all the things that you go through once there's something to look further into. And obviously at that point, it's fear, it's the unknown, it's who do I talk to, what do I do? And went through the biopsy process twice to make sure that we were getting the right tissue, and then was diagnosed. I almost canceled my mammogram because we were, I scheduled it every year, scheduled on the, basically the same week. And so I was going out of town. I was going to meet him out of town, and it was going to kind of cramp my schedule. And so I almost canceled it and said, I'll just reschedule it. And because I really want to get to the airport and get out of town, and this is kind of just going to be an inconvenience today. And I thought, nah, I'll just rush. I'll let it'll be more of an inconvenience to reschedule.
Yeah.
And so I kept the appointment and rushed off to the airport, didn't think a thing about it. That was on a Thursday. On Friday, we were in the airport, sitting in the lounge, getting ready to fly back. And they called and said, we saw something on your mammogram. We need you to come back. For me, at that point, I was still in I think everything's fine. I have dense breast tissue.
Yeah.
I think everything's fine. For my husband, he said he felt the moment when we got the phone call that the world shifted. He said at that moment, he didn't say that at that moment. And then after, in the car ride home from the biopsy, we still didn't know. I said, or from the car ride home from the second mammogram and the ultrasound, I said, when they said, you have to have a biopsy now, I said to him, I think this is going to be something. I don't think I'm going to die from this, but I do think this is going to be something, and we're about to embark on a journey. And he said, I felt that when we got the call. And so went into it kind of anticipating, and I don't mean that in a gloomy way. It was more that it was like God preparing me.
For sure.
This is going to be a
You
journey,
got your armor.
and I need you to be prepared. So at that point, I then went through surgery. So I had a partial mastectomy, where 50% of my left breast was removed to remove all the cancerous tissue. And then I also had 9 lymph nodes removed. And then I did reconstructive surgery at the same time to make sure that I was balanced and looked good afterward. And then I went through a month of radiation once I healed from the surgery. And that completed the actual treatment part of it at first. The initial part of treatment was that I would do 7 to 10 years of aromatase inhibitor or anti-hormone therapy. Now I am living cancer-free and going through my screenings every 3 months and continuing the journey as healthy as I can be.
So I heard you say 2 words that we love so much: routine screening,
Mhm.
routine mammogram. Did you personally have a family history of breast cancer?
I do. This may make me a little bit emotional. My mom, who has since passed, she actually passed the same year that I was diagnosed. She was a stage 4 survivor of breast cancer for 17 years. Incredible. And incredible that she was able to live life pretty abundantly after her diagnosis. She went through a pretty rough patch, but when she was diagnosed, I was 35. My youngest child was 1, so my babies were little, and immediately then, because how aggressive her cancer was, I started routine mammograms annually. Did a baseline mammogram and then started routine mammograms and diagnostic mammograms early on. So through that, it wasn't just that I had the routine mammograms. I had them consistently in the same month each year, which my doctor said was very important for creating that baseline of kind of following what was going on in your body each year. And so every January, I had a routine mammogram. which I firmly believe led to the early detection, because they were able to take my mammogram of January of 22 and see what it was like, not only from January of 21, but January of 20. And they saw a slight difference that might have been missed if I hadn't done so. And so that slight difference allowed for my treatment options to be a little more flexible and a little more viable in that process. It doesn't make the journey any less frightening or scary, but it does allow you to have treatment options that are available to you and give you some better outcomes, I believe, in the end.
You mentioned your mom.
Mhm.
There are a lot of women that are going to watch this, and that we will come across in different ways at NBCF that do have a family history of breast cancer. And fear often keeps them from getting that screening, seeing a doctor, seeking any type of medical help, because they feel like I probably have it too.
Right.
What would you say to the women that have a fear of getting screened due to a family history?
I think the best way to get over the fear is to actually go through the process and do the mammograms. There was not a sense of dread for me, I might have it too. I will say that the very first mammogram I had, I was scared to death. I was frightened, I was nervous, I was emotional because I knew what my mom was experiencing. But once I went through the first mammogram, I then knew what to expect and knew what would be coming. And so for me, it was just as important as any other screening I might do. Because I knew that my mom's cancer had been aggressive, and I knew my mom, in part of her story, had missed her mammogram for 6 months. It always was fresh for me and my sisters that we had to get checked and had to be consistent about that checking, because the best way to combat our fears and what we might experience was to hit it head on and to take it with as much education, as much information we could. And the only way to do that was to get the screening done.
You know, we are making progress slowly in the world of diagnosing breast cancers sooner. A lot of that is from genetic testing. Has genetic testing been a part of your journey?
Absolutely. My mom was tested, and I was not tested immediately, but my mother was tested. She was negative. But then when I was diagnosed, they believed it was very important for us to take that step to get tested as well. So I was tested. My sisters have been tested as well. I have daughters. I have nieces. They've not been tested yet, but I was negative and my mom was negative. So at that point, we're in a holding pattern. I will tell you that I think that the genetic testing provides just one more layer of information, one more layer of, I wouldn't call it security, but it's one more piece of knowledge. And the more knowledge you have, the more you can make the decisions about what you need to do for your own health and taking care of your own health now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I want my girls to feel confident in their health journey going forward. They're in their 20s. I know that they're afraid that this journey might impact them as well. So they're in the next few years going to get tested just to see what connections might exist. And I will say that research is coming out every day where we're finding out more and more and more. What my mother was tested for is different than what I was tested for. 5 years from now, it'll be different again. Take the opportunity, whatever information you can get about your own diagnosis, your own process, your own health, I think is so vitally important. And if you would do it for your kids, you should do it for yourself. So I was an elected official in our community when I was diagnosed. And at the point that I was diagnosed, I was also up for reelection. So a lot of decisions had to be made in my family for me about what my next steps were going to look like. I do think you can have a diagnosis like breast cancer and you can keep going with whatever that path is for you. If the path for you is to continue working, to continue pushing for your passions and to continue pushing for your goals, I think you can absolutely do that. I see women in our survivor groups that are doing that every day. But my husband looked at me one day and said, I need you to fight cancer as hard as you're going to campaign. And for me, at the moment that I looked at my family, my breast cancer fight needed to be the campaign that I focused on. I knew that other people could do things out in our community, but no one could be my husband's wife. No one else could be my children's mother. And so I made the choice to step back and focus on my cancer journey. It was emotional. It was difficult. I won't say that it didn't anger me at times of having to be in a position to make that choice, because I do think that breast cancer at the time, I think we feel like it takes a lot from us. But I made the choice to be public about what I was going through for a couple of reasons. I knew there were other women out there that were frightened, that had to go through their own journeys of whatever that may look like. And I wanted to provide some level of hope for women, knowing the fear and the anger and the concern or even bitterness they might be feeling. And I wanted to be really honest about that. So I made the choice to not make it all rosy. I made the choice to share publicly in some very honest Facebook posts and some very honest interviews, the struggles that I was having with my emotions, with letting go of things that were important to me, with how I felt about my own body. I made the choice to be public about the hard things as well as the positive things. I think we want to be positive and we want to share that experience and we want to put a positive spin on everything. But for a woman who's in the middle of that, the fear and the emotional drain is sometimes so overwhelming that I think it helps to be honest that I feel that too. And if I'm feeling that and you're feeling that, then we can feel it together and we don't feel as abnormal in a very weird and abnormal journey. And so when I made that choice to go public with what I was feeling, it was hard. It was difficult to share that I was carrying around my drains. It was difficult to share the days that I cried. But the feedback that I received from that was sometimes overwhelmingly emotional for me in a way that I ran into a woman that I didn't know, but she had seen my posts and she said, I went and had a mammogram because of you. And I was diagnosed with cancer that they would not have found because I had been afraid to go get a mammogram. And I figured if you were able to be public about it, I could go and do it myself. And at that point, I realized that there was a message to be shared, that if it saved just that one woman's life, that meant something. So it enabled me to continue sharing even the emotionally difficult parts of my journey. And as I see women now that come to the support groups and say, I'm struggling, it's easy for me to say to them, I've struggled too. And let me share with you how I've struggled, that what you're feeling is legitimate and it's real and it's okay. So let's walk it together.
What has National Breast Cancer Foundation meant to you, and what programs and services have impacted you the most?
Absolutely. I was a recipient of a Hope Kit, which you think that it's a minor thing, but I will tell you what I found is that the Hope Kits usually arrive on a day that the woman needs it most. That I think it's orchestrated somehow, some way. I believe that God sends that nugget to you in a way that you need it most on a day that you need it most. And it's just a little bit of encouragement. So the Hope Kits, I think, are great. I will say that as much as I knew about NBCF, I actually hesitated in joining a support group for a while because I felt that even though I had my emotional ups and downs, that I had plenty of support around me. So I hesitated to join a support group. And it wasn't until I was finished with treatment and I was sitting around having some very emotional responses to what I had experienced and struggling to not move forward, but struggling to understand why I was still feeling the emotions I was feeling, that I reached out and said, I need to go to a support group. Once I walked into that room and realized that the ladies sitting around that table didn't have to be explained how I was feeling, that they automatically knew what I was feeling and experiencing and understood it and acknowledged it and validated it, it didn't just give me the ability to feel it, it gave me the ability to work through it in a hopeful and appropriate way that allowed me to process it better. So on the days even now that I struggle with the fear of going for a scan, or the fear of feeling something in my body and wondering, is it happening again? I know that I'm processing feelings that are very normal and real, and I have a place to work through those because I have women that are surrounding me in that process. So the support groups are an incredible group and way to lean on each other in the middle of it, after it, and beyond your journey in a way that I think you don't find other places. But it's not just the in-person support group. The virtual support group that's nationwide, it's an incredible opportunity for women who do not live in this area to be able to join in on a support group. I have a friend in our virtual natural support group that there is nothing surrounding her. She hasn't got any support groups in her community. There is nothing in her state. So when she reached out, NBCF was the only option she had for support from other women. And she was in dire straits at that point, emotionally, physically, in the middle of the battle. And we were able to surround her and provide support in a way that she just couldn't have any other way. So for my friend in South Carolina, this group means everything because it was her lifeline when there was nothing else for her. For the women who are here, it means everything to be able to walk in that room. But I've even seen family members come into the support group just to listen and learn about what to say to my loved one. What do I need to do to provide support for them? How can I give them the things they need in their darkest days? What does that feel like for them? So it provides such an incredible ability to help women now in the immediacy of what they're feeling and beyond. And I'm forever grateful for what I've received. And I will give as much as I can back to those other women who have poured into me. I think about these women that come into the support group and they've not got anybody or anything, and they're so lonely and they're so scared and they're feeling like they're crazy. And I felt like I was crazy when I was, I'm like, I should feel better now.
Yeah.
I'm done with treatment. I should feel like a warrior, and I don't. What is wrong with me? And then you walk in, and Tina was the first woman, and she said, "Are you tired of people telling you how lucky you are because of how they found it early?" And I was like, and I just started sobbing. And she's like, "You're in the right place."
Yeah, exactly. I want you to tell me a little bit about why it's so important to be a mentor and a go-to and advocate for other women going through breast cancer.
So I had a woman who was one of the first phone calls I made when I was diagnosed. And she gave me some great advice about how to protect myself, how to surround myself with people that were going to protect me during that time, and how to advocate for myself. And she was a survivor as well. And because she gave me that advice, it empowered me to ask some questions that I probably wouldn't have asked. And I've thought about that since that day, how she empowered me and what that meant for me through the entire part of my journey, but especially at the beginning of my journey. And I set out to say, when I'm finished with this, if I can't do something to help advocate for other women, then my journey is a little bit of a waste, right? Like, I've learned something from it, but if I can't give back to someone else the way Nikki gave to me, I'm losing something in that. And so once I was able to start communicating with other women and start to share with other women, I saw the value of even one little nugget of information of saying, you have the right to tell people what you need from them. You have the right to tell people what you don't need from them. And you have the right to question things. Once I could tell them that nugget, it kind of opened the doors of, I do? Wow, I can ask those questions. I can do that. And I think I saw how it empowered other women, and that made what I experienced, and maybe even my mom's journey, a little bit more worth it in a sense, a little bit of kind of full circle. I will say that it was in a support group, when I sat in a support group, that I was struggling with what I was feeling and the side effects that I was having from the medication that I was on. And one of the survivors came up to me afterward and said, "You have the right to question this. I questioned it with my doctor, and here's the choice I made, but do it in a researched manner." And I didn't realize I could question that. And so that one little statement from her empowered me to go back and have a very real conversation with my medical team about my choices. And once I could do that, I was able to make an educated decision for myself. When I saw that empowerment, it was something that I wanted to pass on to other women. And I wanted other women to feel that same strength of being able to go back to their doctors and their medical teams and ask those questions. I feel like when you can go back to your medical team and not only say, "I want to ask these questions, and if you're not on my team, then I have the ability to question you and challenge you and change medical teams," that's empowering for the journey that I'm on, because nobody can make that decision but me. And so no other woman can make that decision for you. But if I can empower one other woman to have that same empowerment that was given to me, then it's just gonna continue on, and the cycle's gonna continue on. And eventually, people are gonna know how to support and talk to women with breast cancer, because the word is gonna get out. And medical teams are gonna know how to respond to women who are questioning the next steps and what to do. And I think that's only going to move research further, emotional support further, and in the end, it's gonna save lives, and it's gonna save more women in the journey. And really, that's what we're here to do.
What, if anything, sticks out to you about NBCF and their programs and services? If you were describing NBCF to someone that's never heard of NBCF, what stands out to you? What makes it different? How do you talk about NBCF?
I think what NBCF does more than any other organization is helping a woman now in the middle of her journey, whether that's through cancer navigators, that for women who are struggling to navigate the medical system or their insurance, or whether that's a hope kit that provides one amounts of just hope in a box of things that you might need, or just that someone else is thinking about you and understands the journey. That helps that woman in the middle of the journey. Whether it's the support groups, both virtual or in person, that allow you to find others who are walking through with your diagnosis and finding connection in what your specific journey might be like, or whether it's just support in the understanding the whole process and what it might look like and feel like when you're done. All of those things are about helping a woman in the middle of the journey right now. And I think that's so encouraging and so necessary for each woman that's experiencing breast cancer. We're doing a lot in the research fields. We're doing an incredible amount in making people aware of breast cancer and how it impacts us and how prevalent it is in 1 in 8 women. But what do you do when you first get that phone call? And I would say, reach out to NBCF. That's what you do, because they're gonna be able to help you in the moment, right now, find the resources you need to get through those first stages of the journey, the middle stages of the journey, and then the final stages of it as well.
For women that think that they can do it all, what do you say to those women?
I thought I was that woman. And I found out that I could do a lot of it, and I could go through the journey with the support that I had. And that was great. But as a woman, you also may be looking at the end of your journey and thinking, I've finished everything that I've gone through. I've finished treatment, and wondering why you still feel the way you do, or wondering why you're still struggling with maybe some levels of depression. And what I would say to you is, you fought a battle. You have been a warrior, and you are strong. And now it's time to do some of that emotional healing that you might need to do to go forward. And I would encourage every woman who's in that place to seek the opportunity to connect with other women for a couple of reasons. One, you might need some emotional healing from the things that you've experienced, whether that's the traumatic journey of losing your breasts. It's an emotional, traumatic experience. your body doesn't feel like your own body anymore. And that's an emotional loss. There's grief in that. And you might need some support in going through that with other women who've experienced that. You might need some emotional support in dealing with the side effects from treatment. You might need some emotional support or even just communicating with other women in the side effects from anti-hormone treatment for years to come and what that looks like. You might need some post-traumatic stress support. Or you might be the person that can encourage someone else based on what you've experienced. So whether you're the person in need and you don't realize it yet, or whether you're the person who can provide that support to someone else, we need you to be part of these support groups to help other women and to be encouraged by other women. We're growing, but your story needs to be part of our story. So I would encourage you to join with us in either getting help yourself or helping the other woman that's going to walk through that door and need you. National Breast Cancer Foundation is helping women just like me now.